Our reading starts when Jesus has just finished telling a parable and suddenly starts to shout. He's talked about service and responsibility, about how those to whom much is given will find that much is expected from them. And suddenly he bursts out, "I came to bring fire on the earth, and I wish it were already burning. But I have a baptism to undergo. How much pressure I'm under until that's finished. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, not peace, but division. Gentle Jesus, meek and mild, anyone?" Luke shows Jesus determined to get to Jerusalem, anxious to fulfill his mission and see his people and the world purified and all impurities burned away. The fire he speaks of is God's judgment, but it's Jesus himself who bears the heat. There is a parallel when he goes on to speak of his baptism. Baptism was a code word for dying. Water in large quantities was a Hebrew symbol for death and for danger and chaos. Whenever I baptized children, I told the family that what I was going to do was to drown their precious baby. Dying and rising implies new life, and baptism is about new life. It doesn't always seem to, but that's what it is. Jesus' baptism into death crowned all that he set out to do, and it was inevitable that the authorities would oppose him and would kill him. When you set out to follow God seriously, it is likely that you will meet opposition and you may well be branded a fanatic. Following Jesus today can be as difficult as it was in the days when Jesus the prophet faced disbelief and opposition. Jesus set out to inaugurate a new way of living, and people were scared. They wanted the security of the status quo, business as usual. And we, be honest, still do. Jesus wanted instant response. He wasn't declaring philosophical truths to be studied at leisure. He was involved in the hurly-burly of a time when you couldn't get a razor blade between religion and politics. The late Archbishop Desmond Tutu once said, "When I hear people say that politics and religion don't mix, I wonder which Bible they've been reading." The president of Iran is less powerful than Ayatollah Khamenei. The Taliban are imposing their version of Afghanistan, their version of Islam in Afghanistan. And right across everything that people do, they've closed down all the secondary schools for girls. France banned the burqa as un-French. American preachers in a country that banned having any state religion helped get Donald Trump elected. And people of Jesus' time would recognize this picture. Jesus speaks into his time and into ours. And he calls on us in this speech to recognize the signs of the times. He saw that the way that people were acting would bring disaster on them. They saw themselves as God's chosen people superior to everyone else, and many tried to gain their freedom from Rome by acting violently. The temple authorities connived at this. They thought that to live as God's people required a war of independence. Jesus knew that they would suffer the most awful defeat if they didn't abandon their violent ways. And he was right, but by then the forces of violence had swallowed him. So, what are the signs for our times? We still have forces of violence to contend with. We could stumble into a war with Russia. We spend billions of pounds on weapons of mass destruction and condemn anybody else who wants what we've got. But I don't think military pressures are the worst. We have a real problem with racism. Some newspapers stoke its fires and increase our fear of others, and racism could yet erupt in sectarian violence. But there's worse. A greater threat is that we live in a consumer society that promotes and creates inequality. We ignore St. Paul's warning when he said, greed is idolatry. We've developed the means to have what we want when we want it, if we've got the money. We've lost the patience that helped us save until we could afford something. We have to have things because we're worth it. And consumerism is like a religion. It offers us a picture of the world that we can live by. But the consumerist picture is manipulated so it hides many important facts, especially the fact that our choices are killing the earth. Fish stocks are depleted by overfishing. Burning fossil fuels is heating the earth, and politicians come up with every cure except stopping the burning of fossil fuels. Deforestation to provide soya for beef cattle and hamburgers, or oil plantations, palm oil plantations. That's accelerating in the very places that provide most of our oxygen supply. Climate change now is real and it's dangerous. People are consuming as if there were no limits, and this harms the world, God's world, of which we are stewards. There's a Scottish ecologist, Alistair McIntosh. He likened the various climate summits to Jesus' meeting with a rich young man who turned away in distress when Jesus asked him to give up his wealth. Wealth is addictive. The more you have, the harder it is to let go of it. And the more convenient fossil fuels have been, and the richer it's made us, the more we find it difficult to let go of them. Consumerism is a myth that creates and feeds addiction. What has this got to do with our faith? Everything. We as a nation are living by idolatry. Idolatry is worship of a created object instead of worshipping the creator of the world. A diagnosis is always easier than prescription, and I have to stop now, but let's think about this. We must take Jesus seriously. He brings the fire of judgment, and he tells us to read the signs of the times. And as I read them, our inward-looking consumer culture is killing us, is killing others, and is killing our world. God takes that kind of behaviour seriously, and so must we.